It takes both of those things. So I don't know. It's it's unfortunate, but and I think what one of the Trump backed off from meeting with Putin again. He pulled back from a kind of trying to work through ending the Ukraine war, and now he's sanctioning him then even more, and there's more weapons sales going on and all this stuff. And it makes you wonder if they got a message from the powers that be. We want this war to continue because we're making money. We like
We're
making
selfish.
money.
Don't cut
We're
us off.
That's right. That's right. I mean, you have to wonder. I mean, it might be just Trump, but it could well be that the powers that are very interested in fomenting war and debt, because this all these countries are in terrible debt. Now we're in terrible debt, but
Yeah.
the European countries are pushing for this war. Their situation is even worse than ours. Economically, it's worse. Debt wise, it's worse. And they seem to want war. But you know what? Whenever you have a war, you can tell your citizens, shut up. There's a war. Shut up.
Yeah.
We're going to do what we have to do. There's a war. There's a big threat out there, and we're going to save you, and you got to do what we tell you. And maybe that's why they want to keep it going. I don't really know, but Trump's like a ping pong ball. Really, he's just getting whacked here and whacked there, and he's not really achieving what he says he wants to achieve.
Yeah.
And right when he gets close, he backs off. Right when it looks like he's going to do the big thing.
I don't know. Well, we've used up our time. I'm sorry we had the technical issues because this was a really interesting conversation. But at least we got to hear each other some of the time, and hopefully the listeners could hear too. So thank you so much for being part of this. And listeners, thank you for being here with me on the New American Dream radio show. It'll be better technically next time, I promise.
spiritual sciences in light of theosophy and other occult traditions. Alright, hello. Welcome to Otherworld Connections. That's me. And yes, you're tuned into Revolution Radio, the number one listener-supported radio station online on the whole internet. And just didn't have my audio coming through somehow, some way, but I think we're okay now. If not, then I apologize. Let's go hear it on the radio feed. Yeah. Doesn't it go silent until you begin your show? Oh, there we go. 5x5 from Mr. Monster. Thank you, everybody, for your attention. I do appreciate it. What was I going to say? You were just listening to The New American Dream, hosted by Chuck Gregory. And you can catch him on Tuesdays, 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. Eastern Time, Studio A on Revolution Radio. And Eagle Flowers in the chat there. Hello, Eagle Flowers, saying I'm on YouTube also. Great, thank you so much. Really didn't mean to put you all to task there. Thank you, Monster. Thank you, Mr. Metal Rabbit, Pat Rabbit. Yes, so before we start, please consider, if you're out there listening, consider donating to Revolution Radio. It's amazing that it is listener supported and volunteer run. So there are expenses, obviously hosting the website for a start and streaming everything. So there's all kinds of things to pay for, and you could consider doing that with Patreon. You can go to the patreon.com/Revolution Radio. There's a sign-up page. Snail mail in US currency. Details are on the website, revolution.radio. You can make a direct payment to the station's credit union's online banking system called Autobooks. And cryptocurrency is another way that the kids are into these days. I know someone, this young guy, he he puts, I don't know how he does it, but he puts in say $20, $50 1 week, and he waits a couple of weeks, and then he withdraws it, and then he's got maybe $100. And that's how he gets by instead of having a part-time job. He just makes these wheel and deal transactions on Bitcoin, through Bitcoin, or at least through cryptocurrency. So I thought that was very clever of that enterprising young man. But I try not to think about that too much, because I remember when Bitcoin came out and I could have bought whatever I wanted for very little. It was very cloak and dagger. I don't know if you guys remember it, and if you guys got it on the ground floor. Probably if you're here alongside me, you probably didn't. I'm sorry, I'm just joking. You might all be filthy rich for all I know. Because I guess it's like investing anyway. Like putting some money in is one thing, but then turning that into even more than what it can be is a whole nother thing. But I'll tell you, when I was a kid and what little money I was ever given, my parents said you put in the bank account, and I hated the bank. I resented the bank. I used to just literally think as a child, why does the bank get to have all my money? And then they'd be like, have a look at this statement. And then it'll be taxes. And I'd be like, how? I used to hate the bank from the very moment I could actually have money and a bank account, which I think is 5 years old in New Zealand. And as soon as I was 7 years old, it was a bloody pyramid scheme, this banking thing. So the school set up this whole system for you to start, saving. And between the ages of 5 and 7, you weren't legally allowed to withdraw your money. And I would just be like, I can't wait till 7 years on. The day I turned 7, I was like, I'm going to the bank. So I went to the bank and got out $30 or whatever it was. And I've been terrible with money ever since. But I think I had the right idea. And I think kids understand, just natural law. Don't steal. Don't take stuff from other people. And don't do it by force either. If you're making a child do that, yeah, that's by force. Sorry about that. All right. Who cares that it was my parents' money that they gave to me? Who cares about that? All right. What's mine is mine. Donor box, international alternative to PayPal. Excellent. I say that every week and I just forget to look into that myself. Or you can consider advertising on the home page for a paltry sum of $25 a month. What would you advertise if you had $25 a month? Would you advertise your show? Does advertising work these days? Oh, I found an amazing YouTube site, but I can't even remember what it was called, so I'm going to shush about that. It was a very young sounding lady talking about the in-pooning, I'm not allowed to say the S-H-I-T word, or the ensloppening, is that another word that they use, of social media and the internet. And she's got a vision. Oh, I've got to find this. I'm just going to have to do it. But I want to talk about other stuff. I just want to... I'm going to try it. I'm going to try and do it. I just think it's... I don't know how old she is, but she's got to be maximum in her early 20s. She sounds like a teenager. And she's got this vision. I don't know if AI helped her write it or what have you, but she's got a vision for the future, the near future of what's happening of the internet and where it has to go. And I don't know about you guys, but I've recently, in the last few months, 6 months, had this feeling of like something's got to give. We can't just pile ads on top of ads on top of ads on top of courses on top of self-help courses on top of self-help courses on top of self-help courses. It's almost like there aren't enough customers to fulfill the financial demands of all the people on the internet. And on top of that, we are fast losing our creativity. And we're desensitizing our wonder and our admiration of the human spirit because we can just scroll through 20 shorts of just amazing creative stuff happening and just be like, yeah, next, yep, next. And it's the platforms. It's not us. We're being conditioned. And I think, this is probably becoming a broken record, this kind of talk. But I was just so impressed that first off that the algorithm even gave me something like that. Oh, I've got to find her now. I'm talking about her. I think I want to play some of her videos. And that's another thing I do. I say, I want to play some videos next week. And then I don't. But come on, she's got to be here. This is worth it. So now I'm in. I'm all chips in, so I have to find it now. There it is. Yes. So her name's Val. Okay, I'm just going to put I don't know if I've even watched this one, but I'm just going to copy it and paste it because honestly, I don't recommend YouTube channels, but for my buddies on here listening, I'm not saying you should listen to it. I just want to share this with you. That's all. Because we're all kind of pre-internet people, and so I just think you might just feel really nice, like you get a good feeling, perhaps like I did listening to this young lady and her pastiche of different videos and stuff. It's quite cool, just videos of documentaries of creative type pursuits and stuff. But anyway, her talk is about I wouldn't say it's super inspiring per se, but she's talking about like that, just going back to old ways or older ways, like pre-internet where there was, magazines, fanzines. I mean, I know that stuff sort of is kind of out there. Physical copies of things, community-based events, and you could argue that all these things are still happening, and they are, but they're buried in the new reality of our life in front of the screen and in social media, and that her vision is that it comes back. She believes that it's going to come back to a balance where the internet backtracks by about half, whatever that is, in the sense that the artist or the songwriter or the such and such that is absolutely no one online will have to be somebody online kind of by default, because we're reaching this sort of tipping point of the encrappening of just slop on the internet, that the people that do actually have talent, not that I'm saying everyone on the internet does not have talent, absolutely not, but just the slop part of the whole internet, which is drowning out the human creativity, there's gonna be a change. And I guess I just admire that she's saying, like, with certainty, that is what it's going to be. And we're big on focusing on our positive mental attitude. That's what I try and figure out, being ever the cynic. And I always look for ways I like to acknowledge people that are being super positive and certain about things like that. And I just think, what an amazing kid. It's amazing. So anyway, I just thought I wanted to share that with you there. Maybe we'll do a watch along next week. So, 7 minutes. God, I can fire off on all cylinders thanks to my little "please help support us" blurb, which I think Willow Andreasen kindly wrote for us, and I just copy and paste that. So thank you to Willow. Okay, my psychic mediumship diaries part 3. So I got another call, everybody. I got another call, and this lady sounded suspiciously like the last one and claimed not to be. Oh, but turns out she's the sister of the person I did a reading for about a month ago. So I'm just going to share, because these people don't give me any money for my time, and I pull a rabbit, no pun intended out there, Mr. Pat Rabbit, out of a hat for them, which, I don't mean it like I'm complaining. It's just, in case you think that I shouldn't really be talking about this, it's kind of like an active diary, which funnily enough is something I could do for YouTube. That could be something interesting. But here's the thing about YouTube, just circling back to all that, is that you could have a great, creative, engaging, and sort of life idea that isn't in line with your life path, and sort of that's the strategy, right, for social media, for YouTube, is to document your sort of life. And that means you've got to make your life you got to live like the dream, so to speak, right? So you could have that idea, but that doesn't mean you're going to, it doesn't mean that you're going to get whatever it is you're going to need from YouTube financially, and in terms of leads and followings and community. You're not guaranteed to get that. And people say, well, you just got to work at it, and it takes about 5 years. Well, sure, but it's not organic, is what I'm saying. It's not a natural growth. And you could just stay in the dungeons of YouTube for your whole life. So and also the people that are successful, they're employees of one of the biggest corporations on the whole planet, right? And that's what they are. And what they choose to do and create is dictated by the rules and regulations and algorithm and operating system of YouTube. So I don't know if it's it's worthwhile in that sense, trying to do your dream, but relying on something as tyrannical and artificial as, the social media operating system that we're in, and is continually getting worse and more controlling, if that makes sense. So it's kind of depressing, like me being ever the cynic saying it that way. I just thought it was refreshing what that lady was saying, and I don't know, I mean, in a lot of ways I think I've been attracted to the online space because in a lot of ways it's easier because it's less people facing than reality, and that's part of the draw for everyone. You might have a niche idea and the internet brings you global. So I think the idea is to keep creating and maybe keep uploading, but don't think about the online strategy. Just be there and spend your time being a human being as much as possible, rather than focusing on 20 uploads a day and being trying to be a certain type of persona for the social media space and all that sort of thing. Like, try not to sell out on yourself. And I think this is part of why Otherworld Connections, sort of 56, 57 odd episodes in, is I'm just being a bit more relaxed. It's nice to have a little chat with you guys and just make it more something that I'm quite happy to come up to the mic. And I've always been big on reciprocated learning, and these videos I'm going to be playing are for my learning too, for my building up my strength on archetypes and shadow, and just the childhood experiences and how that affects these things. I want to get more knowledgeable on that. I've read a bit about it, but I want to keep doing more. So I'm just using it as an excuse to sort of further myself a little bit. I just hope it's not too boring. And then if it's not, well, I'm still, if it's really bad, then, well, I'm still learning, I guess. So anyway, back to this mediumship diary. So lady rang up. I was having a nap. I was having a nap and the phone rang. And here's another thing I do want to share with those of you listening, is that before the nap I was feeling pretty exhausted, and I do worry about all the stuff that I've been talking about, and should I quit and just go and get a normal job, and financial worries, right? Balancing my time, and then what will I do with the other stretch of my time, and I was just like, look, it's going to be okay. I have to just believe and live like everything's going to be fine, and then in that space where I'm not stressed, I can maybe come up with other ideas of how I'm going to make money. And so a couple of things happened, and one thing happened was I obviously had a nap, and then the phone rang, and this lady wanted a reading. And so I was like, I just sort of woke up, and she said, sorry, I'll call you back. I said, no, this is the best time, because right before bed and right after you wake up, really psychic times. So that was interesting, right? Sort of serendipitous. And so I got into my head, this is just came into my head some tarot cards, the King of Cups and the Eight of Cups. And because I've been talking too much, I've run out of time to talk about this. But the King of Cups, I mean, we can just cut one of the videos short. But so obviously I had to think, like in my mind, I'm a little bit like, well, okay, those are your cards, and I feel like, that's really the job that I've done, because I know she's not really going to pay, and in a sense, like that's kind of enough, but obviously it's not. And so what I'm learning about this mediumship stuff is that it's obviously really, really hard, but it's obviously like a many hats thing. And probably the most important hat for doing it, if you're just helping people that you don't even know, is probably like an exchange, right? Presenting yourself in a way that, and framing it in a way that they should feel like they should give you something, like a donation for your time. That's probably, to be fair, the most important thing, because I don't know if they're a good person or bad person, or if they're going to listen to the advice that's come from elsewhere or what have you. But I mean, the first one is like trying to figure out why they're ringing, because now I definitely know I've taken quite a few consultations, and no one wants to tell me, what's the problem. So there's an aspect to their calling being, like, in a way I don't blame them, but you don't know if that's the only reason they're calling. Skepticism and non-belief or what have you, right? So you take a call or you take a consultation, and, well, first off, you've got to prove yourself. So that's already a job, right? You have to figure out why. You have to intuit the reason that they're calling you, which I think is already like a big psychic task, right? You don't want to tell me, so you're now under the microscope. So this is just me sharing what I'm learning from this. So you have to do that. And I did that. I did that through receiving the image of the King of Cups and the Eight of Cups. But then on top of that, I have to be a tarot reader, right? So I have to know off the bat what the King of Cups and the Eight of Cups means. And in this instance as well. Because if you take a reading, like maybe a YouTube video of a reading, they're broad, right? They're general. And they could talk for a while because they might know the card. Well, they will, these people that do tarot readings, like, they know their stuff, right? You could just, like, if you went to school and you memorize stuff, I'm not saying that tarot readers are like this, but there is an aspect to memory, right? When you see the card and you go, oh, I associate that with these, even just knowing what the symbols on it mean. And it is, up to a point, a question of memory, right? If you want to get every little nook and cranny aspect and, nuance to the card and to each symbol within the card. And then it's about applying it to that person on top of that. So, because it's not necessarily a sequence, it's not like a structured tarot reading, it's just what came to my head. So it's like, now it's tarot, so it's like, okay. And then you got to kind of keep them occupied. Like, I don't know how I could do this face to face, because so I sort of get up off the couch and scramble for my pendulum, and I go and get my deck, and I start my card deck and start shuffling, and that's when the Eight of Cups came. So I had the Eight of Cups, the King of Cups, and the Eight of Cups, and it's to do with feelings. And my first impression when it's like kings is sort of like mastery, right? But you have to think on your feet. So I've got my definitions in front of me, and I'm sort of talking to her about where she's from, and I'm trying to figure this out. So I douse over these different definitions, because it's got to be a context. This is the message in here, and it's cryptic, right? So is this about her and someone else? Yes, it's about her and someone else. It's about, like her relationship to someone else. Yes. Because cups are about feelings and strong emotions and that sort of thing. And so, one of the things about the King of Cups is being very sort of in service, like giving, kind, and helpful, like mentorship or something like that. Leading with the heart, and then the Eight of Cups is about walking away. Eight of Cups is, these 8 cups here, you've drunk them all and they're done and it's time to move on, kind of thing. You're drained. All the emotions are out. Like the 8 is sort of as above, so below. It's sort of a holistic kind of thing. Like, you're spent. A little bit of that. So anyways, that's what I explained to her. And then she said, oh, well, I've sort of got she didn't even want to tell me. She was, oh, yeah, that's probably to do with my daughter. And then I think, well, do you want to tell me more? No, she didn't want to tell me more. It's like, okay, fair enough. Well, I think you're being too helpful, overly helpful to your daughter. And it's time to move on from that. And overall, the vibe was positive, right? So it's a good thing. It probably sounds like a hard thing. So it's not about excommunicating with your daughter, but it's about, putting a boundary now. And it's going to be good for her and it's going to be good for you. So, Gino the Psychic striked again. And it was pretty good, right? How I go about it is not how you see on the documentaries and the TV shows. So I don't know if it's really a thing that I could actually become that kind of a thing. But also this kind of a thing that I do and kind of spend my time on is also why I can't really hold down a regular job. So I don't know. So anyway, that's the Gino Psychic Diaries episode 3. That I did the job. I did it well. That I don't like general readings. That's what everybody wants because they don't want to share. But I do think that if you were to ring up a psychic medium, it's because you've got an issue and you want some help with that. And I do think that the people that ring up, they don't trust that you're legit, which it does upset me a little bit because they're not paying me. So why would I what would I get out of trying to lie to them? So they don't want to share the issue. They just want to say, hey, I want a general reading. And then they want to see if if their issue pops up in terms of like my psychic mediumship. And then I do that and it does. So that's kind of already like, I think in the service world, well, that's already a charge, right? That's like tick that box on the invoice, isn't it? I don't know. And then the next one is actually decoding that, getting the advice for that. So it becomes a whole package. So yeah, so the challenge is what to do about general readings and how to actually make it so I don't feel like that. So it doesn't feel like they get a free reading. The free reading's really good, but they get to leave saying, well, I just did you a favor. Which is kind of how every call kind of ends, either distasteful or you're welcome that I called you kind of thing. So it's about trying to frame things. I do see why like people that charge a lot of money for these things and how they act. I do understand why they act like that. Still, I don't believe in that. I think that's the part of this kind of stuff that is BS, where you put on these airs and graces, so it's kind of performative. But now I'm starting to see that, it's kind of going to be essential. You probably want to make them feel like they have to give you something at the end of it, I do think. So, yeah, probably a long way to go, but that's that. Gino's Psychic Mediumship Diaries, episode 3. And so now we are going to check out we're just going to watch some videos if you don't mind. Let's go to this other screen. Yeah, so just going on to YouTube, and we've got This is all Jungian stuff. So this is from scapegoat to seer. How the broken child becomes the empath. It's a Carl Jung original, allegedly. I guess if we check out enough of it, we'll know. So this is about children that become scapegoated. I know the scapegoated child, the black sheep, is definitely highly represented in the alternative media and truth community. So that's something that's I really want to explore more, and I think it's going to be helpful for anyone listening to this, if you don't already know it already. Let's just press play. Here we go.
The story begins long before the empath discovers their gift. In a place where innocence is burdened with weight it never chose to carry, the child does not step into the world thinking they will be the scapegoat. No child ever does. But within the quiet order of the family, roles are assigned without words, and the sensitive one is often chosen as the vessel. They become the mirror upon which all the hidden shame, guilt, and unresolved tension of the family is cast. They are too soft to deflect it, too open to deny it, too unguarded to fight it, so it seeps into them like rain into unprotected earth, shaping their identity before they have even discovered their own voice. The scapegoat child learns quickly that love in its pure form will not be given to them without condition. Instead, it is measured against performance, obedience, silence, or the ability to absorb blame that belongs to others. They come to understand that peace in the home is often purchased at their expense. For if they carry the chaos, others can appear clean. This injustice is not seen by outsiders. To the world, the family may look intact, even functional. But behind the closed doors, there is always one child upon whom the spotlight of accusation falls. The child does not yet know that they are stepping into a lifelong initiation. All they can feel is the sting of exclusion, the loneliness of being marked as different. When something goes wrong, it is their fault. When emotions run high, it is their presence that is questioned. Even when they succeed, the glow of their light is dimmed by criticism, comparison, or cold indifference. In these moments, they are not simply learning to carry blame. They are unconsciously being taught how to bear the weight of shadow itself. And here lies the paradox. The scapegoat child, though shamed and silenced, becomes the one who sees what others refuse to face. By being pushed into the role of carrier, their eyes sharpen to subtleties no one else notices. They feel the shifts in tone, the sudden silences, the storm brewing beneath a smile. They become attuned to the invisible, not because they wish to, but because survival demands it. In order to stay safe, they must read every flicker of emotion in the room. They must become experts in deciphering the unspoken language of tension and unrest. While others in the family remain blind to dysfunction, the scapegoat sees it clearly. Their suffering becomes their first lesson in perception. The injustice burns, but within that fire, a strange awareness is born. They begin to sense the hollowness behind words, the fractures in the mask of perfection, the truth that lives beneath denial. Though the child may not have the language to name what they witness, their body remembers. Their nervous system becomes a compass pointing toward hidden truths long before the mind can articulate them. It is a heavy crown for a child to wear. To be blamed is to feel unworthy, to carry the illusion that one's very existence is wrong. Yet deep within that falsehood lies a seed of awakening. Because they are cast out from the illusion, they are forced to live in truth. They may long for acceptance, for warmth, for belonging, but what they inherit instead is vision. And vision, though painful, is the beginning of wisdom. The scapegoat is not only the rejected one, they are also the chosen one, though not in the way the child imagines. They are chosen to bear the weight of what no one else will touch. They are chosen to feel what others numb. They are chosen to see what others pretend is not there. And in this role, as unfair and isolating as it is, they begin the journey that will one day transform them into the empath. The path of the scapegoat begins in sorrow, but within that sorrow lies the seed of profound transformation. For the one who carries the shadow will one day discover that they were never cursed, only being prepared for the gift of sight. There comes a moment in the life of the scapegoated child when the wound becomes more than a private ache. It becomes a doorway. This wound is not like the surface injuries that heal with time or are soothed with gentle reassurance. It is a wound of the soul, a tear in the fabric of belonging. It arrives not through a single blow, but through 1,000 small cuts, through glances that dismiss, through words that pierce, through the quiet erasure of their presence. It is the wound of knowing far too early that love is not always safe, and that trust can be broken in the very place it was meant to grow. This wound changes how the child sees. It sharpens them in ways they cannot understand. While other children play with innocence, this child listens for shifts in the atmosphere. They hear the footsteps on the stairs and already know whether anger or silence is coming. They watch the movements of a parent's hand and understand whether it carries comfort or threat. Their body becomes a tuning fork, vibrating to the frequencies others cannot feel. The wound becomes an uninvited teacher, forcing their eyes open before they are ready. In that constant hyper-awareness, something irreversible begins. The nervous system learns to be alert, never fully resting. Even in quiet moments, the child does not trust that peace will last. This unending vigilance leaves its mark, but it also gifts them a perception that runs deeper than sight. They can feel emotions before words reveal them. They can sense lies in the spaces between sentences. They know when affection is genuine and when it hides resentment beneath a smile. The tragedy of this wound is that it isolates. To see so much is to feel apart from others. The child wonders why no one else notices the contradictions. Why does no one else feel the storm gathering in the room? Why does no one else sense the weight behind a sigh or the meaning hidden inside silence? In this loneliness, they carry a secret awareness. They are awake in a house where others sleep. Yet, what feels like a curse in childhood becomes the shaping of vision. Every painful experience chisels away their innocence. But with each blow, the eyes of the heart open wider. They learn not only to recognize what is spoken, but to see what is concealed. They realize that the surface rarely tells the whole story. Behind anger, there is often fear. Behind cruelty, there is often deep pain. Behind neglect, there is sometimes the echo of wounds passed down through generations. The wound that opens the eyes is not gentle. It breaks apart the child's trust in appearances, but in that breaking, it gives them a rare capacity to perceive truth. They begin to notice the currents that flow beneath every interaction, the unspoken agreements, the roles people play to hide their fragility. It is not knowledge they seek, it is knowledge that seeks them. And it does not arrive with ease, it arrives with weight. To live with this wound is to carry both danger and possibility. The danger is that the child may drown in the flood of sensation, overwhelmed by what they perceive, unable to shield themselves from what others project. But the possibility is that they grow into a being who sees reality more fully than most, one who can pierce through illusions and touch the essence of human nature. The wound is the beginning of the empath's sight. It is the unwanted initiation that separates them from ordinary perception. They do not choose it, but it chooses them. And though it carves sorrow into their early years, it also plants within them the seed of extraordinary vision. The wound that once marked them as fragile becomes the very source of their strength, for it has taught them to see what others cannot. The child who has been marked as different learns to survive in silence. They carry their pain quietly, but within that silence, something extraordinary is happening. While the world believes they are merely enduring, they are in fact being trained in a hidden apprenticeship. This apprenticeship is not taught with books or lessons. It is taught through the raw experience of living in an environment where every moment must be read with precision. To endure is to study, and to study is to transform. Every glance becomes a lesson. The child notices how an eyebrow lifts just slightly when irritation is rising, how a parent's voice shifts by the smallest tone before anger erupts. Every sigh becomes a signal. They learn that silence does not always mean peace. Sometimes it means the storm is gathering. Even laughter can carry multiple meanings, sometimes genuine, sometimes sharp with cruelty disguised as humor. The scapegoated child cannot afford to miss these details, for their safety depends on anticipation. So their awareness deepens until it moves beyond the surface, teaching them to read not only expressions, but energies, not only words, but the weight that lingers behind them. It may look from the outside like the child is passive, merely enduring the harshness of their environment, but inside they are sharpening an inner vision. They are learning to decode what is unsaid. They can sit in a room and feel the undercurrents no one acknowledges. They learn to sense when someone is hurting but hiding it, when someone is angry but covering it with charm. Their gift begins as a necessity, but it evolves into a sensitivity that borders on the mystical. What others dismiss as overthinking or imagination is in fact the unfolding of perception. The child is not imagining, they are perceiving what others are too blind or too numb to notice. In their silence, they are gathering wisdom. In their pain, they are cultivating sight. This apprenticeship is hidden because it is born in suffering, but it is also sacred because it prepares the child for a role they cannot yet imagine. This sensitivity does not come without cost. The child often feels exhausted, drained by the weight of what they absorb. They may feel as if they carry emotions that do not belong to them, as though every room they enter imprints itself upon their nervous system. And yet, though heavy, this burden is also a profound education. They learn empathy not as an idea, but as a lived reality. To feel another's unspoken sorrow, to sense the truth behind their mask becomes second nature. What others call intuition is for them a language they were forced to learn in order to survive. The silent apprenticeship of sensitivity creates a paradox within the child. On one hand, they long to be unseen, to escape the gaze of those who blame them. On the other hand, their very survival depends on seeing everything with clarity. They become watchful, almost invisible. Yet their inner vision expands until it touches depths of reality few will ever know. What began as vigilance becomes empathy, and what began as self-protection becomes a gift of understanding. They cannot yet see that this apprenticeship is shaping their future. To them, it feels like a burden, a strange heaviness that makes them feel out of place among their peers. While other children laugh easily, they are already reading the sorrow in a teacher's eyes, already sensing the anger behind another child's cruelty. They cannot turn it off, and they do not yet know that they are being prepared for a path that will one day transform their suffering into wisdom. In time, the silent apprenticeship reveals its true purpose. The child who once felt powerless begins to realize that their perception allows them to navigate life differently. They see through facades. They recognize truth hidden beneath lies. And they carry an ability to connect with others at a depth that feels almost otherworldly. What was once merely survival becomes the foundation of their calling. The scapegoated child, trained by silence and refined by pain, emerges with eyes that can see what most overlook. Their apprenticeship was never chosen, but it has given them a rare gift, the gift of sensitivity, that will one day become the essence of their power. There is a moment in the life of the wounded child when innocence shatters. It does not happen all at once, but through a slow accumulation of betrayals, a quiet realization that love will not arrive in the way they had hoped. At first they believe that if they try harder, if they behave better, if they remain small and invisible, affection will finally find them. They wait with open hands, but the warmth they crave never stays. And then one day it becomes clear protection will not come, love will not shield them, safety will not be guaranteed. In that moment something collapses inside. The child who once looked at the world with unguarded wonder begins to see the cracks. This collapse of innocence is devastating, yet it is also the turning point that shapes the empath. The eyes that once searched for comfort now learn to see truth. They notice the dissonance between what is spoken and what is felt. They sense the hollowness in a parent's reassurance, the way a compliment can carry contempt in its undertone. What once was accepted without question is now examined with a depth that only pain can summon. The world no longer appears simple. It reveals itself as layered, contradictory, and filled with masks. The child begins to understand what others deny. They grasp that love can coexist with cruelty, that care can walk beside neglect, that those who wound are often the same ones who say they care. This knowledge is heavy for a young heart, but it awakens a kind of sight that innocence alone could never provide. In being forced to see behind the veil, the child enters a deeper reality. They begin to sense that human beings are not only what they show, but also what they hide. This awakening is not born of choice, but of necessity. To survive, the child must learn to discern truth beneath appearances. They cannot rely on words, for words often deceive. They cannot rely on promises, for promises often collapse. Instead, they rely on intuition, on the unspoken signals that reveal what is real. Their awareness becomes sharper, their insight keener. They begin to sense the distance between intention and action, between mask and essence. They see what others overlook because they no longer have the luxury of blindness. The collapse of innocence is painful because it robs them of the simple faith that love is safe. Yet, at the same time, it births depth. They no longer drift in the shallow surface of life. They are pulled into the undercurrents, into the hidden truths that shape human relationships. This awareness may isolate them, for few around them can understand what they see. Yet it also prepares them for the role they are destined to play. To be an empath is to walk with eyes open, to live with the ability to sense beyond appearances. And that journey begins the moment innocence falls away. The paradox is that what feels like loss is also the gift. The child mourns the end of simplicity, the end of believing that love is unconditional. But in that mourning, a new way of seeing is born. They develop a perception that cuts through illusion, a vision that can hold both light and shadow together without looking away. They no longer cling to the comforting lie that people are only good or only bad. They see the complexity, the contradictions, the wounds within the ones who wound. This depth allows them to endure in ways others cannot. It grants them the strength to navigate difficult relationships, to survive environments that would break those who remain blind. And more than that, it grants them the gift of truth. They may ache under the weight of what they see, but they are also freed from the illusions that keep others trapped. The collapse of innocence is not the end of the child's story. It is the initiation into their truest sight, for in the moment they realize love will not protect them, they also discover the ability to see love and pain, truth and deception, shadow and light as parts of the same whole. And from this vision, the empath begins to emerge. The scapegoated child eventually discovers something almost unthinkable. The very shadow that once seemed to crush them begins to reveal its hidden gift. It is not the kind of gift that arrives with joy or comfort. It is the kind that is forged in fire, the kind that feels at first like a curse. When a child is rejected, blamed, or unseen, they are pushed into contact with the darkest parts of human nature. They come to know cruelty, neglect, manipulation, and silence in ways most would rather turn away from. Yet, within this unwanted knowledge, something powerful awakens. In enduring what others deny, they begin to recognize that darkness is not simply the end. It carries within it a strange seed, a possibility of transformation. The child learns that pain is not only destruction but also initiation. They come to understand that the shadow can strip away illusions, leaving behind the raw material of truth. It is not easy for them to accept this. At first, they may believe they are only broken, only scarred. They may see themselves as ruined by the weight they were forced to carry. But with time they realize that their ability to hold both suffering and survival has carved out a strength few possess. Through cruelty they learn compassion. The wounds they endured give them a sensitivity to the wounds of others. They know what silence feels like, so they can hear the unspoken cries of those around them. They know what it means to feel invisible, so they instinctively notice those who are overlooked. They know what it means to carry unbearable weight, so they offer a presence that lightens the load of others. Out of what appeared to be pure destruction emerges the capacity to heal. This paradox is the strange gift of the shadow. It teaches the empath that the deepest darkness can open the door to the brightest light. But this lesson is not learned in comfort. It is learned in nights of loneliness, in moments of despair, in the ache of being misunderstood. Each experience shapes them not only by wounding them, but by expanding their capacity to feel. While others may remain numb or indifferent, they are forced into depth, and in that depth they find the hidden treasures of the soul. The shadow does not only wound, it also refines. The scapegoated child, living with rejection, begins to develop an inner strength that cannot be taken away. They realize that even when love was withheld, they still survived. Even when belonging was denied, they still found ways to endure. Even when they were told they were not enough, something inside of them quietly resisted and kept moving forward. This resilience is born from shadow, and it is the foundation of their power. What they once saw as weakness reveals itself as a form of vision.
All right, you're tuned into Otherworld Connections on Revolution Radio Studio A. Coming up to the break. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you on the other side of the ad break. Welcome back to Otherworld Connections. I'm your host Gino, and this is Revolution Radio, Studio A. We're on Discord, so you can join in the chat room there. You can find the invite to that on the website revolution.radio. I am streaming live on YouTube. But you can just listen. Listening works too. Playing some videos, some Jungian stuff. And here we are watching From Scapegoat to Seer, how the broken child becomes the empath. There was a comment about innocence of the child. Yes, this is Carl Jung is referencing the innocence lost of the scapegoated child, one who initiates into realities sooner than others, unfortunately. But innocence is a thing, and we can all be innocent about things. I use the word naive and perhaps playful. Yes. But certain innocences of the scapegoated child are lost because of, maltreatment. I do think the scapegoated child is represented relatively heavily in the truth and alternative media movement, so I want to focus on that for at least a little while, and we get a bit of a grip on what Carl Jung is really on about. So, let's go back to the video. I think this is an AI voice, guys. I think it's been punched through AI with a clip of Carl Jung's voice. That's what I believe.
To suffer and still remain open, to be broken and still be able to love, is no ordinary feat. It requires a strength that goes beyond survival. It requires the ability to transform wounds into wisdom. The empath does not simply escape their suffering. They allow it to teach them. They discover that the shadow does not exist only to destroy, but also to awaken. In time, they begin to see that their life has been shaped not by accident, but by initiation. The shadow they carried became the teacher that no one else could provide. It showed them the reality of human nature, the truth that light and darkness are intertwined. It gave them the ability to look at suffering without flinching, to stand in the presence of another's pain without turning away. And it is this ability that sets them apart. For the world does not need those who deny the shadow. It needs those who can walk into it with eyes open and bring back the light. The scapegoated child becomes the empath because they learn to hold both the wound and the wisdom, both the sorrow and the compassion. They understand that the shadow is not only a place of loss, but also a place of becoming. For in walking through it, they discover the gift hidden at its heart, the gift of a love that is deeper, a sight that is clearer, and a strength that can never be taken away. There comes a time when the scapegoat begins to understand that what was once their deepest curse carries within it the seed of vision. For so long they lived on the margins, rejected, silenced, made to believe they were unworthy of belonging. They were pushed outside of the circle of acceptance, treated as the outsider, the one who would never quite fit. And yet it is precisely in this exile that their transformation begins. When you are denied a place within the illusions of the family, you are forced to see the world without them. You are not protected by denial. You are not comforted by lies. You are thrust into truth. And truth, though painful, becomes the fire that awakens the sight of the seer. The outcast learns to look with different eyes. While others cling to appearances, they see beneath the surface. They notice the fracture lines in relationships, the subtle tensions that no one dares speak of, the contradictions between words and actions. Their vision becomes sharpened not because they sought it, but because they had no choice to survive as the scapegoat. They had to develop a way of seeing that would keep them safe. What began as vigilance grows into intuition. What began as protection grows into wisdom. Exile carries its own kind of initiation. To be cast out is to be stripped of illusions. It is to feel the pain of rejection so deeply that you can never again confuse false belonging with true connection. The scapegoat discovers that acceptance at the cost of truth is no acceptance at all. And so, in their isolation, they begin to value authenticity more than approval. They start to see clearly that most people live behind masks, that most relationships are woven with unspoken compromises, and that most hearts are afraid of exposure. They know this because they have lived it, because their own exile was built on the refusal of others to face what was real. What others interpret as weakness in the scapegoat becomes over time their deepest strength. Their sensitivity is no longer only a burden. It becomes a compass. They can feel the currents of energy in a room. They can sense the unspoken emotions of those around them. They can discern when someone is hiding their true face. While others are distracted by surfaces, they have learned to pay attention to essence. This is the gift of the seer. The one who was once silenced now carries a vision that cannot be silenced. It is a lonely gift at first. To see so deeply is to stand apart. The scapegoat may struggle to share their insights, for others are not ready to hear the truths they perceive. They may be dismissed as dramatic, too sensitive, even delusional. But in time, they learn to trust their vision. They learn that what they perceive is real, even if others cannot acknowledge it. And as this trust grows, their exile shifts from being a punishment to becoming a calling. They understand that they were not pushed outside simply to suffer, but to learn to see from a vantage point others could not reach. The fire that once burned them now becomes the light by which they guide others. They are no longer only the scapegoat who carried blame. They are the seer who carries vision. They have walked through rejection and discovered resilience. They have endured the collapse of belonging and discovered authenticity. They have faced the shadow and discovered light within it. These are not small things. They are the marks of transformation, the signs that what was once meant to destroy them has instead prepared them. The scapegoat becomes the seer because exile was never simply about rejection. It was initiation into a different way of seeing. And when they finally understand this, they realize that their suffering was not meaningless. It was shaping them into the one who could guide, the one who could heal, the one who could perceive truth where others see only illusion. The outcast steps back into the world, not as the silenced victim, but as the one who carries vision. For the eyes of the seer are born in the fire of rejection. The journey of the wounded child does not end in exile, nor in silence, nor even in the discovery of vision. It reaches its fulfillment when the one who was once scapegoated steps fully into the truth of their being and embraces the identity of the empath. This awakening is not a sudden event, but a gradual unfolding. The slow realization that the pain of the past was not a punishment but a passage. Every wound carried, every rejection endured, every shadow faced has been shaping them for this moment. They begin to understand that their capacity to feel so deeply is not a flaw, but a gift, not a burden, but a calling. The awakening of the empath arrives quietly at first. It begins in the recognition that they can sense the emotions of others with remarkable clarity. They realize they are able to sit with someone's sorrow and feel it as if it were their own. They notice how they can walk into a room and know without a word spoken who is hurting, who is hiding, who is longing to be seen. What once made them feel strange and out of place now reveals itself as extraordinary. This sensitivity that once caused exhaustion and confusion becomes a compass that guides them toward connection and healing. Yet this awakening is not without challenge. The empath must learn to navigate the weight of feeling so much. Without boundaries, they risk drowning in the emotions of others. Without discernment, they risk mistaking another's suffering for their own. The same gift that allows them to heal can also consume them if not understood. And so the empath learns a new lesson. To feel deeply does not mean to carry everything. To be open does not mean to be unguarded. The awakening requires balance, the ability to remain rooted while still perceiving the currents of others. What distinguishes the empath is not only the capacity to feel, but the ability to transform what they feel into compassion. Because they know the taste of rejection, they choose inclusion. Because they know the ache of invisibility, they see others with rare clarity. Because they know what it is to walk in darkness, they bring light to those still lost in it. The very wounds that once threatened to break them now shape the way they love. Their heart is marked by tenderness, not because their life was easy, but because it was not tenderness. The empath's awakening also brings with it a profound understanding of human nature. They no longer see people as simple or one-dimensional. They have lived too close to shadow to fall into such illusions. They know that cruelty often masks fear, that indifference often hides sorrow, that control often conceals fragility. This insight allows them to hold others with patience, to approach even those who wound with a depth of understanding. They can separate the person from the pain, the mask from the truth, and in doing so, they become healers not only of others but also of themselves. There is a sacred power in the empath's presence. Without needing to speak, they can create spaces where others feel safe to reveal themselves. Without needing to fix, they can hold another's pain in a way that makes healing possible. Their gift is not in doing, but in being, not in forcing change, but in allowing truth to rise to the surface. They become mirrors in which others see themselves more clearly, and guides who can walk beside those in suffering without turning away. This final transformation is not about escaping their past, but integrating it. The empath comes to understand that they were never simply the scapegoat, never only the wounded child. They were always being shaped into someone who could hold depth, who could see truth, who could love with a fullness that others might never reach. Their awakening is the recognition that their life has meaning, that their suffering was not wasted, that their path has always been leading them here. The empath stands now in the fullness of their being, no longer defined by blame or exile, but by the strength and compassion born from the journey they have walked through shadow, endured the collapse of innocence, and discovered the strange gifts hidden in their wounds. And in this awakening, they realize that they were not broken but prepared, not cursed but chosen to walk the path from pain into profound perception. The story begins long.
Yes, so that was Carl Jung on the scapegoat becoming the seer, how the broken child becomes the empath. And you'll notice that it's a little bit, obviously it's like the topics he explains clearly are difficult to explain, and I find them very circular when he explains them. It's sort of like, you're messed up because you're messed up, and that's kind of the point, and that's your gift because you messed up, and then you can heal. But then if you don't heal, you are messed up, but being messed up is really good, and kind of thing. Like that's way oversimplifying it, but I guess it's what the Jungian thing is, right? Integrating sort of, in a way, accepting where you've come from and what you've been through, and kind of using that as something that makes you unique. Yeah, and that's the town fire siren going off in the background, and Ernie runs out to this mound in the garden and howls in time and in tune with the siren. So I don't know if you can hear that, but that's there it is. Did you hear it? I just love it when he does that. And so Eagle Flower in the chat is asking if is this leading to discussion of healing the inner child? Yes, I'm not 100% sure on the inner child being a Jungian thing, but there's a correspondence between what goes on with the child internally and overcoming or not overcoming certain things which inform the negative aspects or the shadow aspects of ourselves when we're older in adulthood. And Eagle Flower disagrees with the collapse of innocence. It can be retained but also experience the realities of the real world. Would it be more correct that the childlike innocence is retained, therefore allowing one to grow into the natural empathic abilities? I'm not so sure. I think that video is really just about children within a family who are treated as a scapegoat, as a convenience. So that's more about a result of the dynamic of maybe parents and siblings just sort of allowing one child into the family to be blamed for stuff. Just, it's all their fault. Kind of like the weakest link. So I don't know. So yeah, moving on to the next one. We've got a bit of time left, so I've just got half an eye on my doggy. Okay, so this is how to heal your inner child and regain your self-love. So I don't know if it's really a direct follow-on, but I did want to find something that had something on the inner child and as part of Carl Jung's philosophy. So it was a good question, Eagle Flower. So let's get into this. I'm pressing play. We've got about 40 minutes left, 45 minutes left. Okay. So viewing is recommended. I think some of it's not going to be spoken.
There is a part of you that you do not know. A quiet part, buried deep, that speaks only in dreams or hollow moments you can't explain.
It's going to be one of those voices, guys.
That is your inner child, still there, waiting to be seen, to be loved, to be accepted unconditionally. And if you often feel you're not good enough, if you keep searching for love from those who cannot love you fully, if you constantly believe you have to try harder, be better, be more beautiful to deserve love, it's not because you're weak. It's because that child still lives in you, still hasn't healed, and still believes love is something you must earn. We grow up carrying unspoken beliefs, etched into our subconscious by childhood. That crying is a weakness, that anger is bad, that only perfection makes us worthy. These wounds don't vanish as we grow older. They quietly shape how we relate to others, how we treat ourselves, and how we exhaust ourselves trying to feel loved. This video isn't about placing blame. It's about awakening, about recognizing that wound, understanding its roots, and beginning the journey to heal. A journey that isn't easy, but is worth it, because it leads you back to yourself. Not the version of you that performs for love, but the real you, whole, complete, worthy. This is the moment you stop chasing love from the outside and begin learning how to give it to yourself.
Okay, just a bit of an ad invasion on YouTube. Won't be a moment. Don't know about that background music, but hey, let's go.
Because no one can love you more deeply than the one who has been hurt and still chooses to rise and love again. Number 1. Who is the inner child? None of us are born feeling inadequate. A newborn knows nothing of the idea that it must be perfect to be loved. It expresses emotions freely, unafraid of judgment, unashamed of being itself. That child laughs when it's happy, cries when it's sad, rages when it's hurt, openly and fully. It exists as a raw, whole piece of life in its most natural state. This is the archetypal image of the inner child, the innocent, emotional, vibrant part of our soul that Carl Jung believed never disappears. In Jungian psychology, the inner child is not merely a memory of childhood, it is a living part of the adult psyche. Jung called these inner images archetypes, and the inner child is a vital one. It carries within it the power to heal, a sense of wonder, and the unhealed wounds of the past. But what changed that child? What made you, someone who once expressed yourself with confidence, learn to stay silent, to shrink, to question your worth? The answer lies in your earliest experiences with love and safety. When a child's emotions are rejected or ignored, when they cry and are told, "Stop crying, there's nothing to cry about," they don't learn how to regulate emotions. They learn that their emotions are a problem. Carl Jung once wrote, "Emotion is the chief source of all becoming of consciousness. There can be no transforming of darkness into light and of apathy into movement without emotion." When a child is denied emotional expression, they are denied the right to be themselves. That is the first wound to the core of their being. And if that child could speak at that moment, they might whisper through tears, "If I'm not good, will I still be allowed to stay?" A small question, but one that quietly becomes the condition for every relationship that follows. Eventually, the child realizes love isn't given unconditionally. They begin to tie their worth to behavior, to grades, to being well-behaved. The once free child becomes cautious, calculated. If I do the right thing, I'll be loved. If I mess up, I'll be ignored. They learn something dangerous, that love is a reward, not a birthright, and so love becomes a competition. They try to become a better version of themselves to hold on to the attention of parents, adults, society. But deep down, they start to lose touch with their true self. One example is the story of a girl who throughout her childhood had to take care of her younger brother instead of being cared for. Her mother often said, "You're the older sister, you must set an example." And because setting an example meant hiding her needs, she learned to suppress her emotions, never complain, never ask for anything. She grew into a strong, independent woman, but felt constantly drained in relationships because she didn't know how to allow herself to be vulnerable. The child within her still believed, "Only if I'm strong enough will I deserve love." This is the trap for millions of adults still running on a childhood operating system rooted in scarcity. Carl Jung pointed out that everything repressed in the past becomes part of the shadow, the psychological shadow. In Psychology and Alchemy, 1944, he wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." When the inner child is not accepted, it is pushed into the dark. It doesn't disappear, it waits to be acknowledged. But instead of showing up as a child, it surfaces through repeated behaviors, loving the wrong people, seeking validation, fearing abandonment, never feeling good enough. These wounds of rejection and neglect silently drive our psychology, like buggy software running in the background until we ask, why do I keep repeating these patterns? And then, the most dangerous thing happens. The child learns to hide. It understands that to be accepted, it must conceal itself. Don't be loud. Don't complain. Don't be too different. It learns to read adult emotions, to adjust itself accordingly. It becomes the people pleaser, the good child, the one who's always okay, roles that seem safe but are deeply damaging. The tragedy is that these roles persist into adulthood. We still smile when we're sad. We still say, "I'm fine," when our hearts are breaking. We still live to be liked, but no longer recognize ourselves in the mirror. That's the cost of abandoning the inner child for too long. We lose our connection to who we really are. The healing story cannot begin unless we realize that child is still here, not in memory, but in every emotional response today. It's the one who cries at rejection, the one who fears silence in love, the one who feels small when someone doesn't choose us. And it's also the one waiting for you to return, to hold its hand and say, "You don't have to earn love anymore. You are enough, just as you are." Understanding the inner child is the first step in the journey of individuation, the process Jung described as the greatest spiritual mission of a human life. We are not here to live as others expect. We are here to rediscover our true self among the shadows, the wounds, the parts we once rejected. Healing the inner child is not sentimentality. It is the most profound act of self-love. A love that transforms, not just soothes pain, but frees the self that's been trapped by memory. You don't have to keep performing. Your inner child doesn't need you to be better. It needs you to be present, to be brave enough to look back, to embrace it, and say, "I see you. I believe in you. I won't leave you again." And that is when the real journey begins. Number 2, the wound beneath every relationship. And then the child grows up, but it never disappears. It isn't buried, isn't erased by time or age. It simply takes on new shapes, wears an adult mask, and continues to live inside you. Except now, it influences what you least expect. Love, loneliness, insecurity, and even the way you choose who enters your life. If you've ever wondered why you keep falling into relationships that make you feel small, where no matter how hard you try, it's never enough, where you love someone who makes you wait or doubt, then pause.
Enjoy the ride of melt-in-your-mouth chocolate.
You're unlucky. Not because you're unattractive or unworthy. It's because an old wound is choosing for you. A child who once felt abandoned, unworthy, is still quietly leading the way. We often believe love is a rational decision, but more often, it's an unconscious emotional reflex. You didn't choose someone who makes you feel dismissed. You simply became familiar with that feeling from a young age. It became your emotional comfort zone, where pain feels familiar enough to feel safe. When someone loves you completely, unconditionally, without control, it feels strange, You don't know how to receive it. You begin to doubt. Are they being real? Why are they so kind? What have I done to deserve this? And so you start to withdraw. Not because you don't want to be loved, but because deep down, you don't believe you're worthy of love that doesn't require effort. Carl Jung called this the shadow. In Ion, Researches into the Phenomenology of the Self, 1951, he wrote, "The shadow is a moral problem that challenges the whole ego personality, for no one can become conscious of the shadow without considerable moral effort. The shadow is the part of the soul we reject, avoid, or refuse to admit as ours. And because it's exiled into the unconscious, it becomes the most powerful force in our behavior. In love, that shadow is often the wounded child who never knew what it felt like to be fully loved. Consider the case of a man in his 30s, successful, well-liked, but in relationships, he's always drawn to distant, emotionally unavailable partners. He tells himself he prefers a challenge, but in truth, he's following an old pattern. As a child, his mother was strict and emotionally withdrawn if he didn't perform well. So, love became conditional. Subconsciously, he believes he must earn affection, and anyone who loves him too easily feels untrustworthy. Jung once said, "What you resist persists." Because he never made peace with his shadow, it keeps showing up in every partner he chooses. Or take the woman who's been through 3 relationships where she was consistently undervalued. The sad part isn't that she stayed, it's that she kept trying, kept changing herself to please her partners. Why? Because as a child, she often witnessed her parents fight, and she believed if she were a better child, more obedient, her parents would be happy. She tied her worth to saving others, and that pattern replayed itself in every relationship. In the Archetypes and the Collective Unconscious, Jung wrote, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. The real fear isn't being abandoned, it's facing the truth that we keep repeating the same old wounds because we're too afraid to confront the hurting child within." Do you see it now? When we don't heal the inner child, we don't just choose the wrong people. We treat ourselves the way others once treated us. We abandon ourselves when we most need love. We criticize ourselves when we make mistakes. We silence ourselves to be accepted. This loop isn't punishment. It's a message. A message that a part of you has never been embraced. The real danger is when you live in that wound for so long, it becomes your identity. You don't just love the wrong people, you start to believe you are the reason for everything that goes wrong. That something is wrong with me. That I'm not worthy of love unless I earn it. And so, you settle for less than what you deserve. Jung warned of this when he wrote, "We meet ourselves time and again in 1,000 disguises on the path of life. We encounter ourselves over and over, hidden behind countless masks, a distant boyfriend, an emotionally detached girlfriend, a partner who's never fully there. But behind them all, it's still the child in you, waiting to be loved the right way." So the question isn't, why do I keep loving the wrong person? It's, what part of me is choosing them? What part of me believes I only deserve that kind of love? When you have the courage to ask, you begin to see. And once you see, you can choose differently. No one is hurting you more than the shadow within, born from a child who was never fully loved and who grew up without ever healing. But you are also the only one who can change that. not by running from pain, but by turning toward it, facing it, naming it, and stopping. Stop the repetition, stop the self-sacrifice, stop the self-blame, and begin to love in a new way. A love that starts not with someone else, but with you. Number 3, the map to healing, the journey of individuation. Unhealed wounds quietly influence every choice we make, from the job we accept, the partner we love, the friends we trust, to how we see ourselves in the mirror each morning. That's why so many people spend their lives not truly living for themselves, but merely replaying old emotional patterns under new names. But this is the moment to wake up. It's time to stop and ask just one question. If I am not what others did to me, then who am I? This is where the journey of individuation begins, a path Carl Jung saw as the core of human spiritual development. In Memories, Dreams, Reflections, 1963, he wrote, "Individuation means becoming an individual, and insofar as individuality embraces our innermost, last, and incomparable uniqueness, it also implies becoming one's own self." We could therefore translate individuation as coming to selfhood, or self-realization. This journey is not about turning yourself into someone new. It's about returning to who you really are. The self you once knew, now buried beneath layers of expectation, pain, and performance.
If your home is sum insured, you could discover that only some of your
Just an interfering ad break here. See if we can skip this.
Healing your inner child does not begin with blaming your parents or your past. It starts with one light, the truth that the child still lives within you, still waiting to be seen. The first step is to bring the unconscious into consciousness. Jung wrote in Ion, 1951, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." This means you cannot heal by bypassing the pain, painting it with positivity, or pretending things are fine. You must write it down, look at it, call it by its name. Sit with yourself like a compassionate adult and say the things you've kept buried. I once felt invisible. I once believed I had to earn love. I once thought I wasn't enough. Naming the truth is the beginning, because you cannot heal what you're still denying. The second step is to stop repeating old patterns. To do that, you must learn to recognize when your reaction comes from the wound, not from your authentic self. Imagine starting a new relationship. If the other person takes hours to respond and you find yourself spiraling with anxiety, that's not your present self reacting. That's the child who once stood at the school gate all day, waiting for someone who never came. Becoming aware of these reactions isn't about blaming yourself, but about no longer letting the wound make decisions for you. Jung wrote in Psychology and Alchemy, 1944, "To confront a person with his own shadow is to show him his own light." When you realize your behavior stems from a wounded part, you gain the power to choose differently, to choose love over fear, freedom over attachment. The third step, perhaps the most painful, but also the most freeing, is to give yourself what you never received. Think of what you once longed for the most, a hug, the words, "You are enough," or simply a non-judgmental gaze. You can give that to yourself today, not by waiting for others, but through small daily acts, writing letters to yourself, speaking words of kindness, choosing nourishment over punishment. One message I often repeat to people starting this journey is, Don't let the voice of the one who hurt you become your inner voice. You've heard, "You're not good enough. You're too much. You can't do it," enough times. Now it's time to replace those voices with, "I believe in you. I'm here. I won't leave you again." Finally, the journey of individuation cannot be complete without forming a new relationship with yourself. Imagine there's a child living inside you. You wouldn't tell that child they're stupid for feeling sad, weak for being afraid, or worthless for failing. So why do you say those things to yourself every day? Jung described harmony with the true self as the key to connecting with the self, the fully integrated being. In The Relations Between the Ego and the Unconscious, 1928, he wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And you cannot become who you truly are if you keep treating yourself like a problem to be fixed." A woman who learned to love herself after years of self-rejection once told me, "At first, I felt silly looking in the..."
Okay, I'm just going to pause there because it's starting into something a little different from the inner child, and we've been on the topic of the inner child. And I've missed all the chats, so just so you know, I try to engage in the chat. When I play a video, if I come over to Discord, I lose the feed. So when the video is playing, I try to just stick there. You hear the birds. Yep, it's springtime and the birds have all sort of showing up. We've got a bird book because there are lots of passerines, which are sparrow type birds. There's lots of nuance, different colors, slightly different feathers. Yeah, pages of this stuff. And Meadow Rabbit says Jung was correct there, and Eagle Flower saying, "Isn't it so sad that much of what is being said in this video today is often considered as evil?" I'm not sure if I follow. In truth, that is what we are supposed to... Yeah, what we are supposed to acknowledge and to heal. Yes, I get what you're saying. Yeah, I just wanted to pause it there because I think there are obviously different... I don't know if the inner child per se is a Jungian thing. But in this case, I guess what they're speaking of as the inner child is the decisions or the responses we programmed into ourselves as children, because when we're young children, we are basically subconscious. It's all subconscious mind stuff going on. We're like sort of living a dream reality, and say things, dysfunctional things happen or we experience, and then our subconscious goes, right, that's the kind of thing that happens, so this is how we're going to deal with it. And then when we're older and we come online, after 7 years old, those are informing our decisions. So becoming aware of those subconscious reactions and actions and ways of going about things, which may be erroneous based on negative things that happened to us in our childhood, I guess that's facing the inner child per se. But also people might say like inner child is, which is kind of confusing, is like sort of finding your inner child to do things that we did when we were children that are really cool, right? Like climbing trees, or just being more connected with nature, being playful, and that sort of thing. So I think there's a crossover there. That's what I've been trying to sort of work out in my mind, this inner child concept. So I think there are different interpretations. But the way they're framing it here, maybe they've hijacked the term or vice versa. But I think in this sense, it's what they're using as the inner child is being aware of those programs that we started encoding when we were children. Because that's what we did, that's what it was like to be as children. Just these subconscious imprints on dynamics and how to react to them. when we spoke of why we are here in this lifetime. I don't think it is. Oh, I'm not so sure if I'm following, but I've run out of time, but I do want to hear your thought on that. But I want to go to now because I think the time is really good. So Jung was talking about, like, the Jungian thing, which I kind of felt I never fully jived with, is okay, you're aware of this way you behave, and it relates to this thing you went through as a kid, and you always do this automatically, and it's erroneous, say, and we've got to acknowledge it and where it came from, and that's part of that child aspect, this thing that happened in our childhood, and we just say, hey, I'm here for you, I love you, and you're saying it to the child, your child, when you were a child, so the child that's stayed with you, that childhood experience, which is your sort of, they're saying inner child here, and you say, I love you and I'm here for you, I'm never going to leave you. So that's the Jungian approach to healing. I'm not saying it doesn't work, but I want to go to this other thing. The key to all of this healing is obviously realizing what you do, and where it comes from is obviously really the best, which could be another thing for inner child, like finding your inner child, like looking back to your childhood and embracing it and getting in touch with it. But I just want to, we got 7 minutes. Okay, we got 7 minutes. I just want to play a thing that I think is super effective as well. I do think the Jungian, like spending time and sort of reconnecting with that dynamic is helpful. This is also really, really good. So this is about, because we talked about, we played that video on the scapegoat. This is tapping with Brad. Brad Yates, Tap with Brad, and he has different topics. And so once you become aware of the thing that you want to heal, you can actually tap through this. So I'm actually just going to play this. I'm going to tap along just for the fun of it.
One of the challenges that a lot of people deal with is having been the scapegoat in their family. And if that's you, and you've been blamed for so many things that have happened, even if objectively you had nothing to do with it, it can really limit us from taking action, from taking risks, because there's always this fear of, I'm going to get blamed.
It's a subconscious reprogramming, basically.
You deserve better than that.
And
so allowing yourself to be aware of
child and subconscious can kind of be interchangeable. An interchangeable term. We're talking about healing. So we start with the karate chop.
Even though I always get blamed.
Even though I always get blamed. So you got to see it on the video.
I choose to love and accept myself.
I choose to love and accept myself.
Even though I was always the scapegoat.
Even though I was always the scapegoat.
I choose to love and honor myself.
I choose to love and honor myself.
Even though I was always the scapegoat.
Even though I was always the scapegoat.
I got blamed for everything.
I got blamed for everything.
And even if it wasn't everything.
And even if it wasn't everything.
I got blamed for a lot.
I got blamed for a lot.
And I'm always in fear of being in trouble.
And I'm always in fear of being in trouble. These are acupressure points that we're tapping.
And even though I always got blamed.
And even though I always got blamed.
I choose to deeply and completely.
I choose to deeply and completely. We're tapping into meridians.
Love, honor, and accept myself.
Love, honor, and accept myself.
And maybe even the people who blamed me.
And maybe even the people who blamed me.
Because I choose to be that free.
Because I choose to be that free.
I got blamed for everything.
I got blamed for everything.
They always blamed me.
They always blamed me.
I was always the scapegoat.
I was always a scapegoat.
And even if I was responsible for some things.
And even if I was responsible for some things.
Not nearly as much as I was blamed for.
Not nearly as much as I was blamed for.
And it wasn't fair.
And it wasn't fair.
And I carry a lot of pain from that.
And I carry a lot of pain from that. We're under the armpit now.
All this sense of responsibility.
All this sense of responsibility. On top of the head tapping.
For things that I didn't even do.
For the things that I didn't even do. Between the
all the
eyebrow
anger and
nose.
resentment around this.
All the anger and resentment around this.
And part of me says I should feel resentful.
And part of me says I should feel resentful.
I have a right to be angry.
I have a right to be angry.
Because I was made to feel guilty.
Because I was made to feel guilty.
So many times.
So many times.
For things that weren't my fault.
For things that weren't my fault.
And I didn't feel like I had a choice.
And I didn't feel like I had a choice.
I had to do the time, even if I didn't do the crime.
I had to do the time, even if I didn't do the crime.
And I'm still carrying that pain.
And I'm still carrying that pain.
And so I have a right to feel angry and resentful.
And so I have a right to feel angry and resentful.
I also have a right to feel peace.
I also have a right to feel peace.
I also have a right to feel freedom.
I also have a right to feel freedom.
And I'm allowing myself to process this.
And I'm allowing myself to process this.
I'm allowing myself to get clear.
I'm allowing myself to get clear.
About what was my responsibility.
About what was my responsibility.
And what was not my responsibility.
And what was not my responsibility.
So that even if people blame me for things.
So that even if people blamed me for things.
I can have a clear conscience.
I can have a clear conscience.
So that what they think about me is none of my business.
So that what they think about me is none of my business.
They can try to blame me.
They can try to blame me.
But they're just wasting their time and energy.
But they're just wasting their time and energy.
Because I'm not feeling pain about things I didn't cause.
Because I'm not feeling pain about things I didn't cause.
I'm not taking responsibility where I have none.
I'm not taking responsibility where I have none.
I am taking responsibility where I do have some.
I am taking responsibility where I do have some.
Like I'm doing in this moment right now.
Like I am doing in this moment right now.
Because it's my responsibility to set myself free.
Because it's my responsibility to set myself free.
And I felt that I had to hold myself back.
And I felt that I had to hold myself back.
I was told that I had to take the blame.
I was told that I had to take the blame.
But not anymore.
But not anymore.
They may have put me in jail for what they blamed me for.
All right, we say I'm loving myself in body, mind, and spirit. That's the end of that one. Sorry I didn't get to go through the end of that, but that was a little taste there of EFT tapping. That's Tap with Brad. And anyway, thank you so much for tuning in to Otherworld Connections here on Revolution.radio. Much love, and we will see you at the next one. Bye for now.